All right, day 334. Today we're using REDFIN. We're looking at this properties in 35224. We haven't explored this area of Birmingham too much yet. It's a little bit northwest of Birmingham, you want to call it that, but there aren't that many 4-bedroom properties. So right now I got it filtered on 4-bedroom properties in 35224, just exploring this area a little bit more. And there's like 3 properties up here, so I kind of just picked this property right here. 177 grand. So this is 1025 Stowe Street. This looks pretty good. So yeah, I mean, this looks pretty good. I mean, this looks pretty much rent ready. I don't have to put in too much more capital to make it rent ready. So this is going to be a good analysis as a turnkey rental. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out what our rents are. Now, to do that, we have to look up our county. This is in Jefferson County. So we're going to Google HUD FMR, HUD space FMR. Click on the first link right up top. And then we're going to scroll down to this link where it says access to small area FMRs. Now, when you come here, you can look up FY 2025. This was just updated maybe 2 weeks ago with the 2025 rent. So sometimes the market rents have not caught up yet. So in 35224, by bedroom count, by zip code, now you're able to see that the rent ceiling for a 4-bedroom is $1,580. Let's write that down. $1,580 and $1,420 for a 3-bed. And this is 35224. Okay, 35224 as a 4-bed. All right, now that we got these numbers in here, let me go ahead and get my market rent, right? Because typically these rent ceilings include numbers such as utility expenses. So if you don't provide utilities or cover utilities as part of your rent, you had to deduct the utility allowance accordingly from this maximum rent. Now, the other easier way to look at it and to get another data point for comparison is to look up the market rent. To get the market rent, I go to affordablehousing.com. I go to the owner section. I go to the market rent estimator, plug in the address, plug in the bedroom count. And this is the fastest way for me to get, hey, within a 4-mile radius for 25 units, the average rent is $1,358. So let's write that down. $1,358, 1940, $1,345. And the reason I'm writing down all these numbers is because my partners already know how I analyze these deals. So when I get these data points for them, they understand really quickly where my data came from and where these data points came from, right? So let's go ahead, and now that we have our rent at $1,358 for my market rent and $1,580, I'm going to use $1,580 as my rent ceiling, but I'm not going to use that for the underwriting purposes because of the rent reasonableness test, right? When you compare the two numbers, $1,580, which typically includes utilities, so you got to deduct something anyways, and a market rent of $1,358, I'm going to use $1,358 because that's more reasonable rent. And let me tell you what constitutes as rent reasonableness. Now, if you go to the Housing Choice Voucher Program Guidebook, HCV, Housing Choice Voucher is most previously known as the Section 8 voucher, but they rebranded from Section 8 to Housing Choice Voucher because of all the negative connotations associated with Section 8. So if you go to Section 2.2, it says that in conducting rent reasonableness, the PHA, which is the Public Housing Authority, they're the ones that administers all the vouchers. They must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So in determining comparability, the Public Housing Authority must consider the following factors. So obviously size and unit type matters, right? You got to compare 4-bedroom single-family homes against other 4-bedroom single-family homes. I have pretty good confidence that these are all single-family homes because you don't see people build 4-bedroom apartments. That's really, 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 really rare. You rarely ever heard of that. So we have that here. Okay, now that you got that there, what you want to do is figure out, okay, what is the lower of the two? In this scenario, it's $1,358. So now that we got our asking price, which we are pulling down from here at 177 grand, 177,000. Then for our renovations, let's go to our rehab calculator tab. We got $1,500 for the roof, just in case there's anything from the pictures that I cannot see. In row 46, I got $500 for landscaping, just kind of keep the property nice and clean. I'm going to set aside maybe just 300 square feet of painting in case there's anything that I need to kind of touch up myself. But for the most part, I got another 2 high pressure flush toilets because my properties have high pressure flush toilets and they never clog. So if you have never had a plumber go out to your house for a clogged toilet call, generally that might cost you $100, $200. So I would much rather have and spend the $450 up front to prevent any clogs and also to prevent that drain on my time and energy for having to, 1, panic, 2, call a plumber, 3, call another plumber just to get multiple quotes and just to see if they even have availability to come out to your home to unclog the toilet or whatever. And that all that stuff is just not worth the energy and the drain. So I'd rather much do this upfront for addressing the toilet issues. So that gives me a total rehab number of $4,500, which is more than probably generous enough to get the property started and rent ready. So now that I got these numbers in here and my rent, I'm going to go ahead and plug in my taxes, which I'm going to get from right here on the REDFIN site at $90. Put that right in here, 90 and B28. And for my insurance, I'm going to equals 137, which I pulled from right here on the left-hand side, 137 times 1.2. I'm multiplying it by 1.2 because I anticipate that this estimate is based off of a property being used as a primary residence. When you move from a primary residence to an investment property, typically insurance companies view that as a riskier asset, right? So when they view it as a riskier asset, they're going to charge more in premium. So that's why I'm adding it a 20% premium by multiplying 1.2. Then I got 10% for my maintenance set aside every single month, right? If you've been following me on Instagram at Invest with Kent He, you notice that I just had a roof leak and just that temporary repair cost me $555. The whole roof replacement will easily cost about 13 to 15 grand, easily. So if you don't set aside this $135 every single month for those big repairs, you're going to be caught with a $15,000 bill 5, 10, 15 years from now. If you get lucky, maybe it's 20, 25 years. But you're going to be overestimating your profitability and because you underestimate your expenses. And you don't want to be that person thinking you made all this money and all of a sudden you didn't realize you made no money for the past 10, 15 years because of these big repairs, right? So property management, I got $135 in there. I got 5% for vacancy because someone always moves out. So now we have to go and calculate, okay, how much money am I going to pay for a down payment? Now in F19, I have 25%. And then in E19, I'm going to do equals my asking price in B4 multiplied by my down payment percentage F19. So B4 asking price multiplied by down payment percentage in F19. That means I'm paying $44,250 for my down payment. There's no other assignment fees because it's not an off-market deal. I got 2% for my closing costs. I got $45.60 for my renovations reserve. So now I got to figure out, okay, well, how much am I financing? I just zeroed out all my other loans because this is going to be a one single loan. And in K6, I'm going to do equals to my asking price minus my down payment amount in E19. So I will be financing $132,000, $750 at, let's just call it 8% interest rate right now. Right? This is going to start in 8/20, 8/24. Just going to pick a date so that it starts. But now you're going to get your cash flow number, right? If I rent this property out as a 4-bedroom property for $1,358, and I'm going to cash flow negative $210 a month, that's a negative 4.8% return on my money. And that purchase price is 177 grand, assuming I spent $45.60 on it with a 25% down at 8% interest rate. Now, this is obviously not a deal for me, right? And again, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. Just simply showing you all the work I do every single day to put in the reps and get a better understanding of the market. Today, it helps because now I know in 35224 what do 4 bedrooms are, what are they being listed for, right? Because if you want to do a BRRRR, where you're buying the property, you're rehabbing it, you're renting it out, you're refinancing to pull your capital out, and then you are repeating that process to recycle all that capital to scale faster. Well, you need to have this stuff in place and you need to have your underwriting down and you need to know what the market comps are, right? These are all going to be very, very beneficial to you by putting in a rep. So now what I want to do is go through the exercise of, well, what set of terms or price will make this property a deal? Now, if I'm going for a target return of 10%, right? Watch what happens to this cash and cash number in E9 as I lower my asking price in B4. So if I go to 100 grand, now all of a sudden I'm at 8.13%. If I go to 95 grand, boom, 92, 93. There you go. If I go to $93,000, all of a sudden this is now a deal because now I'm cash flowing $252 a month with a 10.2% return. And this is assuming I'm resting off 1358 again with the same numbers here, 25% down, 8% interest rate. Now, let's go through a few different scenarios. What happens if my interest rate goes down by a full point? Watch what happens to E9 as I drop the interest rate in case 7 from 8 to 7%. This is now becoming a 12% deal, much better deal, right? So what does that mean? Now it means that my willingness to pay for the property goes up. So if I go and increase my asking price in B4, what can I increase it to? As long as it still meets a 10% return. So if I go to 97 grand, now what does that do? 10.9. If I go to 100 grand, oops, 10.8. So now instead of 93 grand, I'm now willing to pay 100 grand for the property because of the lower interest rate from 8% to 7%, because I'm still able to cash out $265 a month, and that's still a 10% return on my money. And that assumes everything else stay constant at a 4-bedroom. So hopefully that helps, right? This is why people talk about the interest rate affecting your willingness to pay, because when you saw that I dropped the interest rate by just 1 point, it increased my ability to pay more for the property because of the lower monthly payment. All right. Now I'm going to do one more scenario, right? Because this is one of my biggest fears. And that fear was, well, what if the rehab turns out to be much more expensive than I thought it was going to be? So if I go to B6 and I increase my renovations to 5 times, right? $22,000. Now, instead of 4.5K, it's now 22.8. See how that much that dropped my cash and cash return by from 10% to 6.4. So now all of a sudden I might only be willing to pay $80,000 for this deal because that gets me back to 9.9%. So this is now an 80 grand deal, still to yield me roughly around a 9.9% return on my money. But now my rehab is $22,800, assuming I'm still at a 7% interest rate. So that is how you take emotions out of the deal, right? You don't freak out. You don't panic. You just run through the numbers. Like, oh, you know what? I had an inspection. They found something behind the walls and said, this is not going to work. Or they scoped the sewer line and realized the sewer line is going to shambles and you're going to have to redig the whole, you got to trench the entire place, replace the sewer line, blah, blah, blah. It's going to cost this amount of money. Well, you can go to the seller. I mean, you should always have an inspection contingency. You can go to the seller and say, hey, this is not going to work anymore at 100 grand. I can only buy for 80 grand now because my rehab now is going to be 22.8K. So now you actually have some reason, some rhyme and reason to support why you can only pay that amount. So that's why I want to go through with all of you today, right? For every single property, there's a price or a set of terms that make it a deal. And it's up to you to decide what your criteria is, right? That's why it's so personal. Your own investment strategy, your own portfolio design is very, very different because you should really understand what your risk tolerance is and what your criteria is and what your strengths are, really, frankly, to be honest. You don't want to go for a property, a big rehab, if you don't believe it, you can manage it. You don't. I mean, some people might look for properties where they cash flow just break even because they think they want to buy in a higher appreciating market. Now, I don't think of Birmingham as a higher appreciating market, but there are other markets where people will say, hey, this is a high growth area. I'm okay with 5% return, or I'm okay with just breaking even because if I make 5% on $1 million property, right, from appreciation, which in of itself is very speculative, very risky, that might be okay for me. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you. And again, this is not investment advice, right? So just really talk to your own investment professionals and come up with the criteria that makes sense for you. All I'm doing here is just simply trying to help you take emotions out of the deal and do the things right. So if you guys want to copy the spreadsheet, you guys can go to affordablehousing.io. Click on the name, put in your name, email, phone number, promise I won't spam you. This is the fastest way to get a copy of the spreadsheet. I didn't design this spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few different folks. I combined it, I modified it, and I made it my own because I knew how I wanted to analyze the deals really quickly, really fast. So you can do it on your own. And my hope is that you copy my homework. Please analyze the same deal I analyzed today. This is a property right on MLS. I didn't make this property up. Real photos, assuming so. And put it on your own YouTube channel. Because when the time comes for you to tell someone, why do you think this is a deal? You can say, well, I've been looking at deals for the past 334 days and they were all not deals, right? They were all not deals. They were all not deals. So I hope you all have an amazing Thursday. I hope you all spend some quality time with your family and friends today, because that's what life is all about. And I'll be back here again tomorrow for day 335. Have an amazing day, everybody. Hope you all learned something today, and we'll do this again tomorrow.